obviously you've heard me talk about it time and time again. Professional wrestling, it's a passion. It's the ethos of this entire broadcast that I bring to you in the platform of your choosing, and it's the ethos for why people give me their time every single week, and it is the ethos for everyone's dream. They love professional wrestling, right? You hear about people going to school and all the training and the sacrifice. You hear about people wanting to be a ref or a manager or a promoter or a wrestler. Well, what if I told you that there's some people out there that have an edge? What do you mean by edge? What if I told you there's people out there that they start wrestling before they start wrestling? What if I told you that there's people out there that before they go to a wrestling school or have their first match in an actual ring, they're wrestling somewhere? And it might just be a park. It might be in the backyard. It might be in a barn. It might be in a litany of places where a wrestling ring may or may not fit, but it fits the imagination. What if I told you that in theory of your constituents, you're easily one of the top 3 people that could have made it pro and then did? What if I told you of your constituents, despite the fact that the zeitgeist of its era has come and gone, it's still revered to this day? What if I told you that I'm sitting with someone that, while being a polarizing figure in the independents, was considered a trailblazer before even getting actual boots? I'm talking right now with someone that I absolutely respect, someone that literally is a jack of all trades and has mastered some. I'm talking right now with someone who is absolutely a stellar talent. This week, the following conversation is scheduled for one fall. My guest, absolute Kris Kage. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Cheyenne, for having me on the show, and thank you very much for that introduction. Wow, you know me. I'm all about the presentation, and boy, was that a good one. I must give it to you. My hat's off to you, my friend. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here on the show.
We try to do that here. A lot of ground to cover. I said it with Mike Law. I've said it with a couple of guys. It's a running joke for me because it entertains me. I got the Stone Cold syndrome. I've known you for about 20 years now, almost. And I know you, but I don't know you, So that's kind of the ethos of it. And you're the definition of always on. You are, in fact, a silver-tongued devil, and you ain't no keyboard warrior because you'll say it to somebody's face. But before we get into that, before we get into Project Codename, I want to start at the beginning. I don't want to necessarily – obviously, you love pro wrestling. At some point, it becomes a passion. You love it. You watch it. Let's just get right to it. Maybe not 2KW per se. How do you get to the yard?
Elementary school. Now, in your beautiful intro there, you mentioned passion, you mentioned getting into it before getting into it. And we love this thing. This thing has been part of my life my entire life. I would say since I was about 2 years old, I have been watching this thing of ours. I have been loving this thing of ours. So I guess I was lucky or unlucky enough, however you may look at it, to grow up with and go to school with in my early years with a couple of kids that shared the same interests, shared the same passion, and shared the same imagination, I guess you could say. So, you know how it is, with your buddies, you grab each other up in a sleeper hold, next thing you know, somebody's picking somebody up to give them a suplex.
Right.
Next thing you know, somebody hits that suplex and you go, hey, that didn't really hurt that bad because you slammed me on the playground mat here. And then one of your friends goes, come here, let me see something real quick.
Let me do this to you. Yeah.
And before you know it, you got a whole federation, let's just say, at least in my case.
Yeah.
It turned out to be by the 6th grade. We had a whole crew of, I would say, about 15 of us who drawing and cutting out belts out of cardboard, copying the pictures off the WWF magazines, doing everything we can to emulate the belts, stealing our parents' Everlast weight belts with then putting cardboard on them. And that's how it really started. So we're talking maybe 11, 12 years old.
Now, when is your first match, bump? How do you want to, when does that happen? Is that pre 2KW? How does that go about?
So aside from, the old school roughhousing, you get to as you get older, you meet other guys from the neighborhood that just so happen to be as crazy as you and as daring as you and want to throw themselves off of high places and all that kind of stuff too. So you come up with you know, your little wrestling groups. And we actually had one, you know, we're talking pre-2KW as you mentioned. And you know, we both have mutual friends that participated in some of those groups. And man, let me tell you, we were taking bumps, if you will. I don't know if that's what you really wanted to call them back then.
Yeah, they were more like bad decisions in retrospect.
Yeah, they were really bad decisions at a very young age. But I will say that we did have a friend that got himself into a little wrestling school training and took a couple of sessions, learned how to bump, came back to the yard, taught the boys how to bump officially. And that was a dangerous day when he taught us how to fall correctly, because we were already doing it dangerously on the surface that we were on as it was. So when he said, no, this is how you do it so you don't get hurt, you know, when you're young and, you know, you think you're invincible, that was like saying, oh, it was no holds barred after that. It was like,
so you kind of end up with, and this isn't a pock shot at him, this is an analogy. So the guy goes, he gets a couple lessons and he comes back to the yard, and you kind of have like this pseudo Eddie Sharkey in the hood, if you will.
Absolutely.
Right? Is that the way to do it? That's
exactly what it was. And before you knew it, because it didn't take long, you know, not to brag or toot my own horn, but I'm a quick learner. You know what I'm saying? I tend to pick things up pretty quick. And if I don't, I work really hard to do so. So, you know, I don't want to say I was a natural at it, but, you know.
Kris Kage, of course, the definition of the humble brag. But with that being said,
of course, you know.
Because I get asked this a lot, because I had a stint, if you will. You're still wrestling, obviously. With that said, maybe you don't know this yet, but gun to your head, what has taken more years off your body? Yarding or wrestling?
Yarding.
Right. Okay. That's what I say all the time.
Absolutely. And I think it's just because the extended period of time that we did it and some of the crazy things that we did, you know, once you start going to wrestling school, you start learning how to do this the right way. You start, you know, developing your relationships with your mentors, and they teach you right from wrong and how to protect yourself and how to take care of yourself. And that definitely changes the game. That adds longevity if you're smart, because, you know, there's a lot of real foolish guys out there doing a lot of foolish things that they don't need to be doing. But for the people that know and want to stay around,
not that the things that you and others weren't doing were not foolish, because they were.
Absolutely, and admittedly
in
so.
The moment, again, they were not, but in retrospect.
Now, but you got to also keep in mind that there was a time, especially where you come from, where I come from, that even the possibility of being an independent wrestler or being on the independent circuit was something that you really didn't entertain.
Absolutely.
It wasn't a reality that, you know, wrestling school. I you know, I'm not embarrassed to say that I was a little late in the game. I was a little older than I should have been when I found out about wrestling school, when I got introduced to wrestling school. And, you know, I wish it had happened earlier, but, you know, it is what it is. And because of that, because you have that mindset, because there's a lot of the guys, and as you know, like you mentioned earlier before, there's only a select few of us that are still around from those days. And if you're one of the guys that are not, back then you're thinking, this is all we got. After this, you know, it's kind of like high school. We're going to have these couple years together.
Yeah.
We're all going to have fun as a group of friends. And when it's all over, we're all going to go our separate ways. And I think that's how a lot of guys looked at it. And so it was just, we're going out there to do what we do.
Now, you literally touched on what my follow-up question was going to be. And with that, Jamal Jackson tells this great story. He's like,
my brother,
and it ties into last week's guest. He's like, yeah, you know, I knew Mike Donovan in the yard, and then all of a sudden 3-4 weeks later, I never saw him again, and come to find out that he was training in Union City at Ace with Mike. So you're in the backyard. I can remember I also had a guy that went, he trained over at Kevin Knight's. He did a couple lessons. He just basically ran out of money. And then he came back, he showed a couple things, and we thought, oh my God, you know, we thought he was the cool kid, right? It's true. For kids where we come from, for wrestling fans, in an era where wrestling, not that it doesn't happen now, but it wasn't as, wrestling's still not welcome, period. but it was certainly less welcome in our era, right? At that time, you know, you didn't walk around. If you walked around with a wrestling shirt, it was NWO or DX. You know, you got shit for everything. So the idea of becoming a wrestler was, that's not going to happen. Plus, the business was still very close knit. So little do we know, Johnny Rodz is a train right away, money or not. You know, little do we know there's Mike in Union City. Little do we know that there's Gino, that there's, you know, Fat Frank and all these things. When do you start realizing, oh, I can do this at the level that I want to do this? Because I didn't realize that. I realized it, but didn't process it until I was about 20.
So I'll actually take you back just a little bit, even pre-2KW. I would say 1990, actually, let's say the year 2000. Let's round it up. Was when we got taken for the first time and introduced to the Doghouse. You know, and if you know, if you come from, New York and you're a wrestling fan, you've heard of the Doghouse.
Absolutely.
And you know what the Doghouse is about, and you know what the Doghouse has given us. So again, bringing it back to the old wrestling crew that was throwing themselves around and acting all crazy. You know, we used to go to the Doghouse, and at the time, the Doghouse used to allow us to rent the building for the day, and film our little amateur hour, but making us feel like we were big boys because we were in the square circle for the first time, which, as you know, and as you could imagine, was like being kids in a candy store.
Sure.
Fast forward, the Doghouse is no more, and when the Doghouse came to be no more, there was a gap and a period of time that at least a lot of us felt cut off from that doorway or that that platform, and went right back to where we were and what we were doing.
And this is, the Ludus hasn't been incepted, right?
Not at all, not yet. So we're talking a few years before. Now we come back to what we used to do, and then we're talking 2KW. That comes into the mix, and it's through 2KW and the popularity. Shout out to 2KW, all the boys, past, present, future, that took part in 2KW, because I know you've been noticing we've been going a little viral all over social media the past couple of weeks. Every couple of years we get a little bit of a revival because you just can't kill it no matter what you try to do. And I would say about 2011, spring, summer, early days of YouTube, viral videos, we get discovered by the Maximos, SAT,
right?
The gentlemen that became my mentors, and a lot of us that went on to do some other things. And they saw the 2KW videos just like everybody else. And they contacted us. Now, what you want to go back? We're talking MySpace. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's actually another thing I want to mention, that people don't realize that MySpace was a precursor to YouTube. And at that time, MySpace, very similar to YouTube. Let me take you back. They did the 5 minutes. Oh, now I could put 10-minute videos on MySpace. Oh, I could put 30, an hour. And that was also an original library streaming service to a degree. And absolutely, you guys capitalized on public access and MySpace, and you could say whatever you want. It's one of those things like you had to be there. Pre-Facebook, post-Gonex, MySpace was the shit. Everybody had it, women, man, and children. You got home, you went to go fuck with your top 5 and check your messages and bullshit and this and that. And it was that 4 or 5 year run that just something about the site, it was magical. But you guys were one of very few yard feds and indie feds that were like, put that shit up.
That's right.
And just to name a few guys that watched 2KW in its apex: Will Ospreay, Cedric Alexander, who used to go back and forth chatting with FMB, by the way, Swerve Strickland, and so many others.
You could add my man. Again, you could add my man. You could add my man Rich Swann to that list too.
Rich Swann, of course. Rich Swann, because we were of an era, we were of an age those were the guys that saw us doing it. And while we were doing it in a park, and I say we because I was a yarder, but I wasn't in the 2K mix. I'm sorry, I don't want to be disrespectful, but in the sense of they saw what could be done. And then through the lens of upload, they saw the Apex, because at that time, millions of views weren't a thing yet. But some of those 2K videos, tens of thousands.
We were
and then
up
there were two that you guys got over 100,000 views on MySpace, right?
We were up there. We were definitely up there. We were rocking it at one time. You know, it was something, you know, like you said, it was the early days of these things. And we were experiencing things we had never experienced before. And, you know, a type of exposure and popularity and just the idea of this social media thing, as you mentioned before, just the way you communicated and connected with people was changing. And to be a big, you know, to have a little bit of an impact on that in those early years, you know, it was definitely it was eye-opening. And I don't know if I want to say that it allowed us to think that we could do this on any specific level yet, but it was definitely, those days were definitely coming.
It was kindling. It was kindling for that fire. Sure. So with that being said, it's funny because it sucks because it ultimately, wrestling is a business, right? And what was the production costs, if any, of 2KW in the yard?
Metro card train fare.
Okay.
I mean,
and
if you could get your ass to the location, I mean, you know, as you've seen, as everybody has seen, it's a very DIY type of operation. You know what I'm saying?
And then your pay was the fact that McDonald's was 100 feet away on Madison.
That's right.
Right. So here's the thing. This is my opinion, because I know what.
I was actually a fan of the pizza from across the street, but that's another story.
Oh, well, Frank and Tom's was still around. That was the best pizza shop in the hood. I don't care what anybody says.
There you go.
That's his son that does the spot down the stairs now, by the way. Anyway,
okay.
I know what ended my backyard fed. There's a litany of things. Not a litany, but I just know. I've always thought that the fact that 2KW ultimately hit an apex, right? And with no financial backing, money mark, whatever you want to call it, it became hard to translate that to, say, the Ace Arena, wherever 2KW shows happened, right? Is that the beginning of the end of 2KW? Was it the guys who were not as good as, say, you, Jackson, F&B, Whiplash? What were the ingredients for it to kind of, right when it could have hit the next level and been a precursor to Hog, what do you think was the demise?
So it's me here. So we're gonna talk real for a second. And I'm probably gonna say some things that, you know, not many people like to admit, and you know, maybe some people might get bothered by, but that's okay. In my opinion, you know, I usually got my eye on everything. In my opinion, couple factors: manipulation,
okay,
ambition,
okay,
selfishness,
sure,
and, you know, maybe a little resentment at certain times.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because I gotta ask. Towards the end of 2KW, were you getting shit? Were you getting side eyes because, oh, now he wants to do this for real? Like,
well,
do
no.
you think you got that?
So here's the thing: is that
because I know some guys who, when they actually were like, oh, he's gonna go to a school and really wrestle, you after that it was like, oh, fuck this.
Well, listen. First of all, that's a them problem, not a me problem.
Oh, I agree.
Because anybody that knows me, even when we were back then, they knew that I took this as serious as a heart attack, whether I thought that there was a future in it or not. You know, if I thought, and especially back then, if I thought that that's all it was and that's all I was going to be, then, you know, like you said, there's no off switch with me. That developed back then. There's a reason, you know, it says 24/7 on all my shit, because, you know, it ain't a gimmick. You know what I'm talking about? So
do you think people look at you a certain way because you take wrestling too seriously? Because I've been told that about me.
Absolutely.
And I know for a fact that regardless of your execution, and I mean this with no disrespect, because ultimately we're friends, right? I could say that.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Right. So I know that a lot of times you say the most truthful shit, the right shit, but the execution is like, all right, hold on. I get why you said it the way you said it, but you didn't have to say it that way. With that being said, which is an asset and a detriment, right? So with that being said, do you think that even in the yard up to your early years, you were getting shit because from your peers, oh, he's taking this shit too seriously now. He thinks he's a WWE wrestler. And now the B of that, right? Because I know oh no, it gets better. Let's say what it is. And I don't care who this offends. I'll meet you in the middle. We came from an era, not that it's not like this now, but it was a massive stigma then where you, depending on who you could not say, oh no, you were a backyarder. Backyarders were the scum of the fucking earth at wrestling schools. Backyarders were beneath the fucking sea level. And if you were in wrestling school, you just kind of left that out. Unless you developed a rapport with your trainer, the boys, whomever, you didn't mention it at all if you could, or if you didn't know any better, you did, and then they'd be like, get out. So from your peers, did you get shit for thinking, oh, now he thinks he's got a contract? And then, which was not even a term yet, but you get what I'm saying. And then it becomes, oh, he's not fucking working with him.
Well, all right. So I'm gonna try to put this.
It's a lot of ground to cover. I'm sorry.
No, and it's all good. And I'm gonna try to hit all your questions because it allows me to get into the story of the question you asked previously about what were the the beginning of the end, if you will.
Sure.
We're talking 2010, 2011. So this is when the ball really starts rolling. You're talking the Ace Arena shows, and we are really cooking at the time. And we are cooking in a way that we had never been cooked before. Now, for that reason, and because of our passion, and because of how much everybody loved being a part of what we were doing, there's no doubt in my mind that had we continued, there were enough smart ones in our bunch that I think we could have gotten it together and had some longevity and been able to put something official together, something that could have been considered on the level with other professional and independent organizations. That being said, we were discovered by who we were discovered by, and at the time, now you want to talk about, you mentioned the Ludus earlier. The Ludus was now being developed in the minds of people, and it was something that people wanted to do. But of course, you're trying to open up a new spot, you're trying to get a little bit of some traction, and you need people to get it going. And at the time, that's when the line came out to us, and that's when the whole hey, I've seen your stuff, you guys are awesome, I want to get involved with what you guys are doing, and it just so happens that I'm opening up this place, and I would give you guys a place to thrive, grow, learn, and develop. As you may imagine, that excited all of us because we were already trying to do that at the Ace Arena, and just the idea of being under the wing and being in the facility of somebody that we were currently watching, because if you remember at the time, they were prevalent, they were all over the place. Ring of Honor, TNA, all that kind of stuff. So and all over the independents, and if you watch Japanese, right, whatever. So it was something that we were looking as fans too. You know how it is, baby. You're young, you're marking out, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that these people are actually interested in us and us. Can you believe that? And
right, absolutely.
And actually telling us that we're good and not shitting on us and not looking down at us because we're backyarders, telling us, hey, don't pay attention to people that say that because we started out like that, and they just get mad. A lot of them started out like that. They just don't like to admit it. And when you hear that from somebody else, it makes you feel comfortable and it makes you feel safe and it makes you feel like, okay, this person understands where we're coming from and they are going to let us do our thing uninterrupted when we get there. But I mentioned manipulation earlier. That turned out not exactly to be the case, because you want to know the real answer to what happened to 2KW. What happened was the Ludus. And what happened is we started there. And when we got there, and again, one of my controversial statements is I'm about to say is I don't necessarily think it was a bad thing, was that the man who was running the whole operation was watching what was going on. He saw everybody that he had at his disposal. And of course, like anybody, like you would, you know what it's like to be a talent scout. You know what it's like to look at people and go, I like this guy. I like this guy. I like this guy. This guy right here is money. This guy over there got the stuff. This guy, maybe not yet, but he's coachable and we might be able to make him into something. And he saw all of that. And so he decided to start plucking here and there. And now I mentioned ambition and I mentioned selfishness. So now you got, and I'll be the first one to admit I was one of them, because you mentioned earlier, I always took this seriously. It was always something I really wanted to do since I was 11 years old, since I was 12 years old. And when I had the opportunity, late or not, a little older than I should have been or not, when the opportunity was in front of me, I was jumping all over it. So when he said, yo, I'm looking at you and I think you could be the one, I think you could be the man, I was like, yeah, well, let's saddle up, because here we go.
So it's funny because with a little bit of that part of the story that I know, no matter
and
who did it,
and not to interrupt you, but to answer one of the other questions, the other guys, I will always say I got to give it up to props to all the 2KW guys. Whenever any of us had any type of legitimacy, you were involved in a show, you went to an independent, you got involved, we all cheered each other on. It was like, yeah, because that legitimately rubbed on us. It brought it down to us. And because we were such tight knit and we were such a family at the time, it was like, we used to have the moniker and we used to joke, and Jamal Jackson could you know, corroborate this story. Team 2KW, baby. Wherever we went, we rolled deep, we rolled in numbers, and it was Team 2KW against the world. There could have been 2 of us against 30 people. It didn't matter. Shoot, fight, kayfabe, it doesn't matter what was going on. We were down for each other. And when we had any type of success, when Mike Donovan went and did his thing, we were cheering him on. We were happy for him. We were like, do your thing, baby. And things like that, things like Donovan, things like Joey Ace, things like Drastic and Ortiz, Santana and Ortiz, the brothers, were the ones that allowed us to entertain the thought that, oh snap, this is possible. And again, now circle back to the selfishness and ambition, and here we are, back to you.
So it was a matter of time, because it could have been one guy, it could have been one Fed. Not that there were as many as there are now in New Jersey and New York, but 2KW may arguably have been the best indie developmental of all time, right? It was going to happen. I know that term is frowned upon now, like, oh, I'm going to make a secondary Fed and make it like developmental bullshit. You know, but if you look at that era, that moniker is very, very accurate. So let's fast forward. You said it. Every couple of years, 2K blows up. It's usually one of the same highlight packages. It's been the same one the last 2 cycles, but it's usually one of the 3 or 4. You know what I'm talking about. We don't have to put them up. Maybe you're not the guy to ask. Maybe you're not the guy to pitch it to. But hypothetically, you know, because One Night Stand's a cliche show, 2KW reunion, is that out of the realm of possibility?
It's funny that you asked that, because
I'm sure it's come up every couple of years, and I'm sure that right now, considering who's commenting on some of these videos, I'm not stupid. I know it's been discussed.
So I've had a couple of conversations in the past, you know, month or so.
Right.
And because I've been asked similar questions by, you know, some of our peers, younger guys that either knew about it already or are being introduced to it now because it's getting the attention that it's getting. And, you know, even some, you know, some videographer and some production type, you know, because they're like, hey, you know, what's up with this? You know, it's popular. Look at the attention it's getting. It does this every couple of years. There's some of you guys still around. My response is usually, you know, while there are some of us still around, I don't know. And you know, you could even answer this as an outsider looking in, and but somebody that knows about 2KW. Are there enough of us from the time that could really make it feel like, you know, because shout out to 2KW Pro, the revival in 2014, you know, and we had a nice little run that did have potential, and we did introduce a lot of new performers that we felt fit the 2KW mold, the style, the flavor, if you will.
Right.
And I think it was cooking, and I think we had something. Now, the question is, can we do something like that again? And is there still enough of the original content to you know, to at least round it out and to make you feel like you're watching something, you know, that you are watching a revival and not just something that's using the letters because, you know, it wants to get a little extra attention.
Okay, I can tell you this. Outside looking in, and this is as somebody with booking experience. Yes, it can be done. It can be done. It would lean more towards the 2KW Pro era.
Absolutely.
But if booked right, it can give you that Slamboree Legends Reunion one night stand flavor that you want. Now, no disrespect, and I never talk like this. You know this. You would need somebody a little similar to me in the booking sense, because now to facilitate that, hold on, hear me out. Because now, because of the guys who are not active or not around, you're not going to want to do match, interview, match, promo. No, you got to have segments. You got to have segments. So whoever was to book it, don't care who it is, but they've got to be aware, and you want to present it a little bit more in a television sense.
Agreed.
My opinion.
Agreed. You know, you and I have, you know, never really had the opportunity to be on, in creative groups together. Let's just say.
Well, half the time you don't like me. No, I'm kidding.
But I think you'd find that we have similar approaches to how we like to see wrestling and how, you know, wrestling, and you know what, I'm gonna scratch that from the record. Not how we like to see wrestling, how wrestling should be.
I said this to Jamal Jackson because I ain't got no reason to bullshit you. I said this to Jamal Jackson after the Shadow Wrestling show. I was like, yo, I that is the most I've ever spent time with Kris Kage since the Yard. I was like, half the time I see him, I think he doesn't fucking like me. But I tell you what, he's much more like me than I would have ever imagined. I was like, he probably can't fucking stand me, but he's much more like me than I would have ever imagined. And half the time when we talk, I still think that you don't fucking like me. Not that I care, but I realize that wrestling wise, yeah, we're very much in the same ethos. We are.
Well, you know, taking it back to the Shadow Wrestling show, I actually had a good time that night, you know, and after that, you were starting to grow on me. But that still remains to be seen after we get through this Walter Diaz business, which I know we'll get to later. But, you know,
that's true. But you know
we're
what?
having a good conversation. Yeah, we're having a good conversation. You give me a nice intro. I like your questions and all of that. But, you know, there are still a couple of bones I got to pick with you, my man.
I know. But in this tender moment, I'm willing to break kayfabe and be like, the only thing wedged between us is the fact that we've known each other for 20 years, but have never spent time with one another. But I'm sure after a while, and after I bust your ass in Uno a couple times, you'll realize I'm a hoot.
Oh, well, now you're just talking crazy. But
hey, I can't take you in a match, brother. But I'll beat your ass in Uno. I'm just telling you what it is.
It's your show. I'll let you get that one.
With that being said, let's go back to it. Yeah, I do think it can be done. Okay, so now gun to your head, the Elks Lodge or the Mecca?
Well,
you got to be aware of your audience.
Well, watch this though. For if we're talking 2KW now, I'm gonna go Elks Lodge because and I think Jamal Jackson may back me up on this. I think a couple of people may back me up on this. If there's one thing that you know made 2KW what it was, cliche as it is, was our connection to the audience that supported us. Because yeah, you know, the YouTube numbers are nice, the MySpace numbers are nice and all of that. But let me tell you something, those people that used to show up for us, those people that used to come down, those people that when we used to travel to Ace Arena in Jersey, used to jump on shuttle buses and used to go to the Port Authority to pay money to take their trip to New Jersey to get into the Ace Arena to watch us and support us and make sure our shows were loud and heavy. And then you want to fast forward to 2KW Pro, the revival, and those same people years later, after the fact, showing up for us as soon as they knew that the show was back in action. I gotta say, just off of that, just off of the strength of I'm confident in our people will show up, we're gonna go Elks Lodge. Not to say that they won't at the Mecca, respect to the Mecca, but
sure.
I'm gonna go Elks Lodge because I think we turn it out, and I think in very, very short order, the Elks Lodge would become 2KW's house.
I'll put it to you like this. It's probably the only show. I don't know if you know this about me. I hate visiting people's shows because I feel like it turns into, why are you here? I don't got time for that because God forbid I like wrestling and support people. So, but I tell you what, I ain't got to be booked. 2KW is one of the only shows I'll go to support and visit because, you know, even though I wasn't a part of it, it was a part of me. And it gave me so much, including some of my best friends. I have a layout for if you guys do a show that I'm only willing to give to you guys that I promise you, once you do it, everyone's going to steal it. So I'd rather give it to y'all.
Okay.
Just saying. And I'll do it after this program. Just saying.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk. So
we got the 2KW business out of this. So 2KW Pro happens. And yeah, I mean, it was hindsight being 2020, not thinking of, you guys probably were thinking in the moment, right? Like, oh, this is picking up again. This social media thing is wild. Let's do this. It happens. Around 2016 is when it gets called quits, right? Give or take.
Give or take, yep.
So where are you at mentally after that? Because you were developing a name in the indies. And while, yeah, of course, at that point, 2KW wasn't necessarily all that you knew, it was ultimately home, right? And I think you don't make your way to BCW until like the end of that year. I know that you were at FSW for a bit, but it wasn't running as regularly as other feds in general that you weren't a part of. So 2KW comes to an end, and at that point, that was like the nail and the coffin. Were you cool, or did you have the Paul Heyman thing? Like, did you have the closure and then somebody had to bring it back? Or when it got brought back, did you get the closure?
I think, I don't know about closure. You know, it's kind of hard to say if we ever got closure on that, just because there was a very emotional component to 2KW going away both times. And I think it was a time that there were a lot of disagreements. I think there were a time that, including just the idea that it was going away, because even though it was for the reasons that it was, I think there were still people that had enough passion that were willing to fight to keep it alive. And maybe there are some people that feel that the ones we needed to hold on were the ones that let go. So, closure, I don't know if any of us have got closure. That may be why we still hold it so close to our hearts, and why we still, you know, it's a very 2KW forever type of mentality, you know, and we always have that whenever we're together, we're all family, you know, it's like the Olive Garden. So, but I actually, 2KW, I got to give it credit for even getting me back into the mix, because if you take it back to 2012, we're talking a year into my run, maybe a little bit more, coming out of the Maximal School, tagging up with my partner Whiplash, you know, doing the things that we were doing, working with Santana and Ortiz, you know, going all over the place and trying to get our skills together and learn and get our footings and our bearings. I had a personal situation, you know, with my mentors. I had a personal situation with the tag team partner that actually made me walk away for about 2 years. So it wasn't until
Right.
2KW got revived, and I was enticed by, you know, being a part of it and being back with all my friends and being back in that comfort zone, if you will, that I even entertained the thought of doing anything again. Once I was back into that mix, it opened up the door for other independent organizations that were running at the time. It opened up the door for me to return to FSW after 2 years. It allowed me and my partner to get back together, which then is when our momentum started. And by the time the end of 2KW came around 2016, we had actually started picking up momentum, you know, around the city, Jersey, you know, wherever we could. And we were traveling up to Rhode Island, got a little bit of Connecticut action, got a little bit of Pennsylvania action. And when 2KW was over, maybe not having closure when it came to that situation, but at least from my perspective, and I know from my partner's perspective and our crew, you know, our tight-knit crew at the time, we were just getting started. And it was like, all right, you know, 2KW might not be around anymore, but there are other things going on. We do have opportunities other places. There are other places that are showing interest in us and do want us around. And, you know, we're not being shunned for being, you know, so it was you know, it was more of an opportunity for us. It was more of like, all right, let's see what we could do. And now without the safety net of 2KW, let's see if we could really make this happen. Let's see if we could really get booked. Let's see if we could really get in. You know, is it just because we're part of this thing, or, you know, are we really a part of this thing?
Yeah, I absolutely got to get, you used the word just now, and I really respect your transparency for saying exactly that phase. Let's see if we are as good or better than the safety net of 2KW. Because ultimately, you could have just worked there, put that shit in the box, and never done it again, right? You could have, you know, but you're like, nah, if we're about it, let's see if we're about it. Having said that, to put a bow on the 2KW conversation, fun fact, one of the venues on Cage Match for 2KW is Little Flower Playground. I love that. Say you're booking it. Just say. Would you book yourself solo, or would you team with Whiplash again?
If we're doing it right now,
and I don't like speaking for anybody else. I'm notorious for saying that, but from just an opinionative standpoint, would it be just you, or is you and Whiplash not off the table? It's the Oprah question. I know. It's okay.
And I respect it, because it's the first time anyone's actually had the balls to ask me. So, all right, you know, I gotta get, you know, I don't really like to show behind the sunglasses, but I got to.
You don't have to go down that route. You could just give me the answer, whatever
it's
you feel.
Good. I'm not gonna disappoint now and hide behind, you know what I'm saying, behind anything. So, first of all, it's pro wrestling. That's number one. So just setting that on the table. And then if anybody knows me and Whiplash's relationship, even just a little bit, I would have to say, and you know, if I were to dig down deep in the heart of hearts, I would have to say that nothing is ever off the table. However, that's a me and him situation.
Sure.
Now, from a booking standpoint, if we're doing it 2024 right now, given everything involved and considering all factors,
sure,
it would definitely be a separate situation.
Okay.
At least for me, it would. You know, only because, and not to, you know, sound any type of way, but I am not really willing to ignore my past 2 years that I've, you know, and the work that I've done on my own to establish myself, because it's not easy when you're a part of a tag team for 11, 12 years, when you're in a relationship for over 20 years, and you're trying to convince both your peers and the people that watch you that you have an identity outside of this entity right here. And not only to convince them that you have an identity outside that entity, but will they accept it, and will it get over, if you will? And I like that kind of challenge. I like being the new guy on campus. I like being the guy making his debut. I like being the one that you ain't never seen before, because I like to be, you know, the one that you may not know me now, but in about 10 minutes, in about 15 minutes, you're not going to forget me.
Sure. So what you're saying is that, and I know it's going to piss Shady off.
And with respect to Whiplash, I was at the Elks Lodge on Saturday night. There was some live pro wrestling action going on that night. And, you know, Whiplash might be doing something else with one of our other former brothers, the Big Bad Daddy. I'm talking about Rays. So, you know, there was some, you know, I don't want to throw anything out there. I hope I'm not spoiling nothing for nobody. And, you know, but I'm just saying.
Well, it opens up the booking possibilities, and if anything,
you know,
we never
we
never got the original match
going on. So, you know,
we never got the original match that I pitched for Six Borough Slam. Just saying.
What are we talking? Refresh my memory.
I'm saying, remember, the original idea was you versus Jackson, Cage, and FMB in the corners.
Well, listen. The fact that Jamal Jackson's been ducking me for I don't know how many years is a whole nother topic. We've been doing that for a long time. He knows that. I know that. You know what I mean? Like, it's no secret. It's public knowledge already. But, you know.
And I could just see FMB doing the Dusty Battleground spot, hitting the back fist, and then throwing a belt around. I could just see that. What about your presence at WXW makes you such a constant there? Because it's kind of what you want in a wrestling career. You started at WXW as a tag team. Obviously, that was the bread and butter. And you guys were the cohesive unit for a long time. Now you are a main event star there. Rivalries, factions, everything that you need to be to draw interest in a main event situation. What is about you in the relationship with WXW? Because it's completely out of your comfort zone. It's in an area where you might not have been as known, if you will. And you took a gamble doing that. Like, oh, you know, I kind of got it pretty good. Yeah, it's still tri-state, but I kind of got it pretty good here in New York, New Jersey. And you're like, I'm going to try the mountains. Talk to me about that.
So you're talking at a time, again, post 2KW Pro. So
it was like 6 months after you up there, right?
Yeah, it was not long after that. Our relationship or my relationship with FSW had rekindled because connections. And it was actually through FSW as we were trying to, you know, you're trying to get out there, baby. You're trying to get your bookings. You're trying to get your name out there. You're trying to, you know, so we're hitting everywhere we could in the 5 boroughs. Whoever will have us, you know, shout out to BCW, especially in the early days, places like that. You know, NYWC. But opportunity, the Maximos, who had and have a great relationship with the Samoans, with the Anawai family, respect, number ones. And you know, hey, one thing I gotta say is that you know, I may be, you know, a little bit braggadocious at times, but I always give it up to the people that helped us get where we are. So you know, if it wasn't for 2KW, you would not be talking to me right now. If it wasn't for the Maximos, you would not be talking to me right now. If it wasn't for Samu, you would not be talking to me right now. And when we had the opportunity to go down there at the recommendation of the Maximos, I just was trying to, hey, we're going to wrestle for somebody that I used to watch on television when I was a kid. Like, you know, somebody that you're talking about being a tag team wrestler, somebody who is a tag team specialist, somebody who is, you know, pro wrestling royalty. So it was more of like, this is another one of those opportunities that we've been wanting, that we've been asking ourselves, can we overcome? Can we do it? Do we have what it takes? Can we impress? And as I mentioned earlier, I chewed it up. I thrived on all of that. We got the opportunity to go down there together as a group, as a crew, You know, the GOAT. Shout out to the greatest of all time. You know, me, Rays, Superstar Whiplash. We went down there, had the opportunity to work in our first appearance with the Anoa'i family, with the Samoan dynasty. You know, we're talking Big Lloyd, we're talking Alpha Jr., we're talking Lance. And I don't know if it was a test. I don't know if it was Samu being confident in the testimonial of the Maximos, but he threw us right in the main event, first night out, right with the Sharks, with his top guys, with his champion, and said, "This is what you guys are doing. Let's see what you got." And you know, I'm proud to say that we did what we had to do that night, and he welcomed us back immediately. And it didn't take long, you know, once me and Whiplash kind of got our ball rolling, it didn't take him long to become a big fan of ours and try to nurture us. And I couldn't be more grateful, because I think I learned more, you know, working for Sam and being a part of WXWC4. You know, we were there for 2 years. He allowed us to, you know, to have our opportunity at the Tag Team Championship. We had our record-breaking reign still unbroken till this day. And I think that's where I really started to get it, because as I mentioned before, there was that little gap where I wasn't around, and you know, repetition and getting out there and getting that there's no better teacher than experience. And I think the experience I had in WXW was priceless to me, because and really invaluable, because it's really where I learned. It's where I think me and Whiplash really honed our tag team operation and what we had going on, and our chemistry and our just knowing each other's thought and move, and which is something that always existed, even going back to the old yard days, but it was just something that really sharpened and not to mention just being with Whiplash and being with the GOAT at the time, both the versions with Rays, both the versions with our sisters, was probably one of the most fun period, where it was just nonstop fun and laughs on the road, and the trips were, you know, trips that I'll never forget. So it was definitely a time period that stands out always to me, and I think it always will, and I'll always be grateful to Samu. And he's always been a mentor to me. I always look at him as another mentor aside from the Maximos. And, you know, I dare call him, with his respect, you know, with his blessing, one of my trainers as well.
Do you think that all the not teeth cutting, but teeth sharpening, I think is a better term to go with, at that promotion is why you eventually became the guy with First Class over at NAW?
I think it definitely helped me. Because at WXW, we definitely were allowed the time and the platform to, you know, to develop as characters. You know what it is, you know what it's like to book, you know what it's like to try and format, you know what it's like to try to get everybody to hit their times on both matches and segments. And you know what it's like when guys want more time than they're allowed. You know what it's like when guys want that live mic, but maybe the show doesn't allow it, whether it be for time, whether it be creative, whether it be whatever the situation. And Samu really allowed us to, you want the mic, go take the mic. You want a minute, you want 2 minutes, you want 5 minutes, go talk to him. You know, I want to see what you gotta. And, you know, for somebody like me, you know, we may not know each other too well, but you know for a fact that I eat all that up for breakfast.
Oh, so,
yeah. So giving me that platform was like just feeding me candy every time we were at WXW. And I think it definitely allowed me to develop that sense of presence for my experiences with First Class and NAW and anything else that I do, including the times where I don't have First Class in my corner and I'm just riding solo.
Speaking of which, there's of course, there's the Zoltan, the GOAT. There's First Class. What is the state of La Camorra at this present moment?
Listen, you know, I'm sure that people see a lot of the nonsense that goes on social media, and you got questions, and you wonder, because you know that the big man may be torn in the middle between a couple of his buddies, yourself included. But the fact of the matter is, me and the big man are good. We've always been good. There's a little thing called trust between us. He and I agree. Our agreement goes back a long ways, and I think we take our agreement and our relationship seriously, both personally and professionally. So I don't think I have anything to worry about. It would be your boy Walter Icebox Diaz that has some things to worry about, because I think time reveals all. And I think the longer we go and the deeper we go and the more TJ gets to know your boy, he's going to know him like I know him. And he may not be one of his favorite people when it's all said and done, is all I'm saying.
But you got to say that this is the Prince of the Purple Carpet Ride, the King of the Scramble. What is it about Diaz? Why don't you see what I see, what TJ sees? What is it about Walter that you're not digging, man?
See, I think that's the misconception we got here, because I was actually willing to give the benefit of the doubt. When the big man told me, hey, come on now, let's see if we could all be one big happy operation. I'm with it, baby, because it's all about making dollars and it's all about getting over and it's all about getting the spotlight. So if we could get it together, it's all good and it's all gravy and I'm down with it. And you know what? I was down with the confrontation we had at the last show, and I was down with getting it done, and when it was over, going right back to business as usual.
But what was your issue with Walter Diaz hitting the pinnacle and becoming a champion elsewhere? What was that? I see the jive that you talk on the media that is social. I see what you type. I see the characters. I see the emojis. Walter Diaz did the unthinkable and became a champion and beat a champion the caliber of Anthony Gangone. And you took exception to that. You took exception to me. Why?
How's this title reign going?
That's not the question. That's not the question.
Wait,
no, that's not the question.
I mean, I'm just saying,
No,
I would assume with Walter Diaz, the King of the Scramble, the Prince of the Purple, whatever the fuck you just said, would actually, business would be booming and, tickets will be rocking and moving like hotcakes. You know what I'm saying?
Don't come here and try to Rosie O'Donnell
let me know when the next title defense is, and maybe I'll show up. We could talk business, talk turkey, and we could talk maybe giving you a real champion that actually can maybe give you some steam and actually generate some electricity. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, you're gonna have to ask the fire department and the athletic commission. Now with that. But this is transferred over now to the project, which, to be fair, you have been also a pivotal part of since its inception, from first-time matches with you at Whiplash to, of course, King of New York, to singles matches, to show-stealing performances, and now with Project Codename Sinatra this coming Friday at the Hoboken Elks Lodge, 7 p.m. Now you're calling out Diaz after for your benefit, Mr. Cage, made him choose, for the sake of providing the fans a proper wrestling card between a singles match with you, which I'm obviously all in favor for, and a scramble match. And yes, I'm willing to admit that Mr. Diaz took the easy way out and went with the scramble match. I'm willing to admit that. But all this hostility is unneeded. No.
You know what? You may be right. It's unneeded. But sometimes hostility is the only way you get things done, unfortunately.
Well,
and at least like in this situation, with all due respect, it's going to be the only way that I get the attention of Walter Diaz, in the way that I want. Because it ain't happening no other way. I tried to do it the nice way. You didn't want to listen the nice way. You want to give them the choice. You say it's for the best of business. You say it's for the best of the fans, but you're going to tell me at the same time that you had no idea that he was going to lean toward the scramble and he wasn't going to take that easy way out. It's a little bit hard for me to believe. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I understand that. And you know what, Mr. Absolute? No, Mr. Absolute, I get it. I do. And I see you. Yeah, we are, as the young kids, we're vibing. We're a bop. And I'm honestly sad, homie, that Walter and you are not going to go toe to toe in a thing. I'm not happy about it. I really believe that he was going to man up and say, I'm going to show Kris Kage who the real performer and show stealer is. I thought he was going to do that. Instead, he chose the scramble match. So therefore, I'm here to inform you, while we're on the subject matter, that Well, due to the fact that Mr. Diaz has chosen the scramble match, and due to the fact that therefore leaves you a little hollow, I think it is in the best interest of the fans of Project Codename, of you as a performer, to showcase in a way that has never been seen before. Never. I want to put you, Kris Kage, in a showcase situation. I want to make sure everybody knows and hears the talent that you have, which is why I'm here to tell you, Absolute Kris Kage, that you will be doing color commentary for Project Codename Sinatra this Friday at the Hoboken Elks Lodge. I know it's a lot to process. I know you are now one of my elite commentators.
You know what, Cheyenne?
Yes.
I'm going to take you up on that offer.
All right. Yeah.
You know why? Yeah. Not only the fact because you need it, because the commentary team would probably die without me, but I don't think there's anybody better to call the action and to tell the story of Project Codename Wrestling than yours truly right here, and to give his expert analysis.
That's what I'm saying.
Especially when it comes to the King of the Scramble and when it comes to your man Walter Icebox Diaz, because I think he would want me to be on color. I think he would want me to give my expert analysis and call everything that he does, play by play, move by move, and you know, if he's lucky enough to be successful, you know, give him his props, you know? So, you know what? You're on. We got it. You're on.
Hey,
you got
fist bump me.
I'm not going to fist bump you, but you're on.
All right. It's a little rude. Of course, that's this Friday, Project Codename Sinatra at the Hoboken Elks Lodge, a pro wrestling independent variety show like no other. You got to be there. Special catered menu, 2 DJs, and of course, ECW hardcore icon, the Sandman. So let's do the rapid fire. I love this, and I gave some thought to this. Fill in the blanks when you can. How is it I've been wrestling so long and I haven't wrestled blank yet?
All right. Let's throw a shocker in there. TJ Marconi.
Okay. Not for nothing, the one guy that I could probably steal the show with.
You're talking about yourself?
No, I'm talking about you. Fill in the blanks. It's rapid fire. It's all about you.
Oh, Anthony Gangone.
No disrespect, dog, but the worst match I ever had was.
Wow. Worst match.
You're thinking too? Is that fucking many?
I mean, no. I mean, it's just, you know, you want to know something. Now that you're throwing that at me rapid fire, I don't know if I've ever given consideration to what my worst match was.
Not that it's not out there. You just never thought about it.
Yeah, you know, it may have been a tag match. It may have been something like that. And I promise you, if it was probably because of something I did, because I'm my own worst critic. And whether it be, you know, I didn't like the shape I was in, or I didn't like my performance that night, or I didn't think I turned it on the way I should have. 9 times out of 10, if I hate a match, it's not because of the other guy, it's because of myself.
The one venue I'd like to wrestle in, realistic answer only.
I'd like to wrestle in the 2300 arena again.
Okay.
And you know, arenas.
If I can wrestle any name right now, it would be
Santana.
The one person that has to be booked on the 2KW reunion show in a match.
Me.
The one person that has to appear at the 2KW reunion show.
Sir William Black.
Not for nothing, the one indie name I know would appear at the 2KW show.
Santana.
Not for nothing, the one indie name that I would chip in to get to appear at the 2KW reunion show.
Osprey.
The most underrated name, in your opinion, in the tri-state area?
Me.
In a perfect world, I would probably wrestle blank at blank arena this Saturday. That's just a hypothetical. I'm not trying to cover over project.
I'm gonna have to go back to no. You know what? I'll give you two answers.
Okay.
Just because I feel like it. Versus Whiplash at the ECW Arena.
Wow.
And versus Santana at the Garden. I know you said,
okay.
Realistic, but hey, fuck it. That's realistic to me.
If I'm being honest, I mean, obviously Santana you can get, but I don't know. I think 2025 is going to be a very interesting year for not just you, but for independent pro wrestling in general. And I got to say this, jokes aside, breaking fourth wall a little bit. When I started the podcast, one of the guys I wanted to talk to was you. I'm so glad we got to do this. And you were a guy that I felt like, but only so much is known. And I felt like I had to tell part of that journey. And a part of that journey is not without 2KW. And a part of that journey is not without your tag run and the stuff you do as a singles, you as a mic man, because you are, in fact, if nothing else, a top-notch performer. And like I told Mike Donovan last week, all the same to you, you absolutely deserve your flowers all the same for the performance that you do put out. I wish you nothing but the best of luck, not just at Sinatra, but in general in the wrestling business, because I believe you got as much a chance as anybody. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you so much for your potential input as a commentator.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. It was a great conversation, and it was nice to chop it up and get to know each other a little bit better.
Absolutely.
And I do look forward to doing it again. Again, depending on how you skate on the thin ice that you're riding on right now. Thank you for, helping tell the story. I appreciate it. It's not something that maybe I've given enough attention to, and I've given enough credit to, and have tried to tell too much. I'm always living in the moment, and I'm always trying to just, as a lot of guys will hear me say, on to the next, and just, what we got coming up next. But so I appreciate that. Shout out to all the 2KW boys and girls. Shout out to, everybody that helped me get here. And shout out to my man Walter Diaz, which I will see on Friday night. You will see me, whether you think you will not, whether the boss thinks you will not, whether the OPIC thinks you will not, whether the big man thinks you will not. You will see my face closer than I think you expect to. But that'll be on Friday. And as for you, Mr. Cheyenne, I would wait to thank me about my commentary and performance until after the night. Let's see if you feel the same way on Saturday.
Absolutely. Not just your commentary, but your general behavior, Mr. Cage. I'll be watching.
Oh, you don't see the halo over my head?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's patining just a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, the following conversation has been scheduled for one fall. My guest, Kris Kage, thank you for joining us. Like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to share, and we'll see you on the next one.